Revelation Wellness community and friends. We have a friend today. We do feel like friends. This is how it happens in Instagram land. Nicole
It
Unice is on
does.
the podcast. Nicole, welcome to the
I
Revelation Wellness
am
podcast.
so excited to be here. I'm a little bit of a fangirl, like probably many
Mm,
people here, where I just appreciate you and what you're putting out there and the way that you just present yourself via social media.
mm,
It's a little bit of a friend of mine
mm.
says, it's a little bit, you might be doing good work, but we're still in Babylon out there in the social media
That
land.
is the
So
truth. You
I
might be doing
really
good work.
appreciate the consistent encouragement in sort of such a healthy and life-giving way that you put out
I
there. So
love
thank
it.
you
Well, I love that we get to actually face to face, Zoom to Zoom today
for
instead of
sure.
be stuck behind an avatar on Instagram. Okay. Well, tell people a little bit about you because I think you're going to be new to
Sure.
some of our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's so nice to meet you guys, and I'm glad to be here. I know that we are like-minded if we're all here listening. I
Mm.
am a mom and a leader who has been through several lifetimes, it feels like, of careers. So I've moved in my life through beginning in fitness and went into therapy. So I was a therapist and a pastor, and now I've circled all the way back to the marketplace. And my day job is in some leadership that I find myself in a fintech startup. So basically covering all the areas of life.
Wow.
And per usual, I have, too much to do and not enough time and constantly need to find ways to stay balanced and healthy and keep the Lord at the center
Yeah.
of it. So if anyone
Yeah.
can
And stay out of
relate,
Babylon.
that's right. And I also write books, and those books are all around sort of the intersection of healthy spirituality and healthy emotional living. So I'm excited to get to talk
Fantastic.
about any of
You
those
are
topics.
our people. Well, you have authored what book number is this?
This is 7, so
Just
I've got
7. Wow. Yeah, when
7
did you start
books.
writing? When you were 13?
So no, I know. Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I started writing actually, and I love this story because I really didn't set out to be a writer. I love communicating, I love teaching and speaking, and I found myself in a limited space. There just wasn't opportunities
Mm,
as a female in ministry to preach or teach.
gosh.
And so kind of plan B, I was like, well, I guess I'll start writing. And so God really used a time where I felt like a lot of doors were closed to me to open up maybe a different avenue for ministry. And now I do preach and I do teach, and the
Look at
world's
that.
changed a lot in the last 11 years here,
Yeah.
where I have an opportunity and invitations to really be a part of some teaching teams in different places. So it's pretty cool to see
That is
how God
amazing.
uses, not what we're expecting a lot of times for his
Yeah.
good.
And it's just your obedience to not to keep
Mhm.
going.
Yeah,
It doesn't look the way you thought, but
no,
he uses it all. Okay,
he
and then
does.
speaking of that, you have written your latest book, Not
Mhm.
What I Signed Up For. tell us tell us why you wrote this book because it's not like any of us would understand the topic.
Relate. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been really encouraging already to throw this phrase out and just see where it lands and have so many people sort of have an immediate reaction where they're like, oh my goodness, yeah, I know what that means. And it means something so different in every circumstance. It may be something like a career change, it could be something in a relationship status, whatever it is. And honestly, I feel like almost as a culture, we can sort of relate to this concept. I know, and I'm sure you guys talk about this, but so much upheaval in our world, so many people that I'm close to who've experienced the same kind of sort of life altering transitions as I've gone through myself. In 2019, I stepped away from a full time ministry role that I loved, sort of in an unexpected way. I found myself kind of feeling homeless and anchorless in my life, not sure what was coming next. It was one of
Mm,
those times I'm sure that some of you have experienced where you know that you're supposed to leave a thing that you were doing, but you don't know what you're going to.
right.
And, I describe a not what I signed up for season as an uncertain outcome with an unknown timeline. And there's
Gosh.
something about the uncertainty of an outcome and not knowing any understanding of a timeline that just, for me, was so disorienting that I found myself really wanting to find a way to navigate and sort of narrate that part of the season. And I found a friend in the life of Joseph in the book of Genesis, the story of
Right.
Joseph, which
Yeah.
we kind of all know the highlights, we've watched the Disney movie or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you really dig into it, it has been alternately comforting and challenging to think about a God who is at work in really unexpected ways for his glory and his good, that I think is available to all of us if we're willing to kind of enter into that
So,
process.
so tell us some key things, just from what you learned in
Oh
studying.
yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I mean, so
Well,
many.
that's
But I
good.
mean, one of them that I love, one of the things that stuck out to me first, as a trained therapist teaching this live several years ago, I'm like, Joseph cries all the time. Like he's crying all the time. So for us to sort of make him this hero figure who just kind of like triumphs through these difficulties and becomes the governor of Egypt, like you're missing out if you don't realize in one chapter alone, he cries 6 or 7 times. Like it's a lot.
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
remember being like,
It's
who is
good.
this guy? Like, that's a lot of crying. And there's this other part where, he sort of, it seems like the story is about to turn, he's been unjustly imprisoned. He's been there for a long time and he is righteous and good. And he interprets these dreams for the king's servants. And you see this other like moment of humanity where he stops this guy that he just interpreted a dream for, the cupbearer, and he's like, hey, when you're restored, don't forget
Forget
me.
about
Like
me. Yeah.
I am not meant to be here. I'm suffering. I am not with my people. Like you
Mm.
sort of feel the humanity of it. And then the very next thing that happens is it says the cupbearer did not remember him. In fact, he forgot all about him. And then we get a new chapter and it says, when 2 full years had passed.
Oh
And I mean,
gosh.
let's all just embrace that. Like when you think the
Yeah.
story is about to turn for you, when you're sort of
Yeah.
faithfully showing up for your life, oh, haven't we all felt that moment where we're like, God, I thought you were about to move and then you
Mm.
didn't. And what
Mm.
do I do with that? And then, the story, there's a really important part that happens next, which I'm not going to give away because I really,
Okay.
you got to read the
Okay.
book or go
Get the
read your
book.
Bible and
We
you'll
like
find
it.
it.
Yeah. Or
But
go read your book. I think they're going to
just,
get your book. Okay. So let's talk about that moment for you. Like,
yeah.
where were your not what I signed up for moments? Like, maybe go
Yeah.
back to some of them.
Yeah. I mean, there was sort of this sense that I think I had, just speaking, friend to friend, where I really knew that I was doing what God was asking me to do. Like it was like
Mm.
there's a place of obedience. I think when we enter into a change in a season, I kind of did the things that I know to do. I had a spiritual director, I had close friends, I was discerning, I took time, I was in it with my
Mm.
husband, I prayed about it. And
Mm.
when the time came where it was the right decision to be made, I just I didn't think it could get worse from there. I mean, truly, if I'm going to just be clear, like, I just think I thought if I'm obedient, and I'm 46 years old, like, I've been on this earth
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
while. And
Yeah.
I thought, if I'm going to do the hard thing and I'm being obedient to it, I just was not expecting it to get worse than
Yeah.
that. And it
Yeah.
just got worse.
Isn't that the
We,
worst?
it's
It's
the
the worst when you
worst.
think this is the worst. No, it's not the worst.
It's
We're
not the
going to
worst,
go
actually.
even more.
That was
So
not the
what
bottom.
what can you be specific?
Yeah, so we ended up leaving. We ended up moving out of our house. We lost dear friendships. We lost our church community. It was one
God.
thing after another. And there was a good amount of stability, and I want to be clear about that because first of all, we shouldn't be comparing each other's traumas because it's not worth doing. I used to always say that when I was a therapist. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
compare your hardships to the life that you're in. You can't compare your
That's right.
hardships to somebody across the
That's right.
ocean. And so we had a lot of good things, but I knew what I was navigated in my soul and emotionally was a season of true loss. And I needed to be gentle, which I talk about in the book quite a bit. Like, if you're going to engage this process, there's a
Yeah.
gentleness needed with your
Yeah.
heart to
Yeah.
allow yourself to
Yeah.
experience loss. And that's a lot of the story of Joseph is that lament, that
Yeah.
loss, that disappointment.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we make a lot of space in our microwave
No.
culture for it being okay. That I remember crying to my spiritual director and being like, I'm just so tired of crying. Like, can
Mm.
I stop crying? And she was like, what would it look like to be okay with not being okay for longer than you thought
Mm,
about
mm,
something that maybe doesn't feel socially acceptable or like whatever your image
mm,
is of how fast you're supposed to move through something,
mm.
when you know there's a lot of good things in life. So a lot of the book is really about learning to be gentle enough with ourselves to allow our hearts to hold together, happy and hard, confusing and triumph
Yeah,
all at once, because I actually think that that kind of heartbreak is what expands our heart, and that
yeah.
that expanded heart makes room for things to be safe for others, makes room for us to be women and men of depth. It makes room for
Mm,
us to be people of compassion. And that's the
mhm,
story of what people say to me about the end of their seasons. They're like, I would never choose that. I never would want to go through it, but I trust God more and I'm more resilient. And I guess it's an invitation to say, hey, what if we do that together in a really honest way? You know?
mm. You said something that we're very familiar with at Revelation Wellness is
Mm,
that you can have the joy and the suffering, the
mm-hmm.
grief, the loss and the gain, that tension,
Yeah.
and that your heart expands.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, as a gal with your fitness background,
Mm-hmm.
nothing grows if there isn't tension.
You got it,
So
girl.
God knows that even though we can grieve and be sad, is
Mm-hmm.
there not maybe something new coming? What would you say overall were takeaways for you with the moments that you go, this is not what I signed up for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think I was reminded, or maybe, I mean, I hate to say it, but for the first time, I often say to people, I'm like the chief wrestler with God. I'm not like a professional Christian who writes books because like things are so great. I write
Yeah.
books and talk about this stuff because I actually think it's really difficult to
Yeah.
fully believe in the core of our being that we are loved by God, that we are
Mm,
fully accepted, that He is
mm.
for us and that He is with us.
Wow.
And I wrestle with that. And I have to do the work to experience God in my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a done deal because I went to seminary. And I think I've learned once again, God is so good and so gracious. And He has a better story than
Yeah.
the one that we could imagine. And by better, I don't mean bigger, flashier, or for you to feel better about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
better overall,
Mm-hmm.
better than we can imagine. And, I remember thinking about this idea from Psalm 23, it says there, you set a table before me in the presence of my enemies, my cup overflows. And having such a clear picture that
Mm.
what if what God means by that is that you have so much love in your life because you've experienced Him that you want your enemies at your table,
Come on.
that your heart is so full of forgiveness and
Yeah.
love that you get a table set in the presence of your enemies because you're like, hey, enemies, come dine with me. Like,
Mm.
I forgive you. I love you. My life is not defined by hardship or suffering. My life is
Yeah.
defined by what God is doing in it. Those are not things we learn through
Yeah.
listening to a podcast. So there's things we
Yeah.
learn by showing up with God and letting
Yeah.
Him move and grow and shape and sanctify our own lives.
And what if it got to the point, and this is a big one,
Mhm.
because it's not what we signed up for. When we think about enemies, we want enemies to pay, we want
That's
enemies to
right.
receive justice instead of what if it got to the point where you could be thankful for the enemy,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
it actually did something.
Well, and that's the story of Joseph. So, we in the book we begin at the end, and the ending of Joseph is him in Genesis 50:20, saying to his brothers, do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? What you intended for evil, God used for good, for the saving of many lives. And I'm like, my big mind blow on the whole Joseph thing is I am absolutely convinced that Joseph arrived at that conclusion far before he was in the presence of his brothers. He
Mm,
was surrendered and fine and
mm,
good with his life, not because he met his brothers, because so many of us think, well, yeah, if God's going to like redeem my whole story with the people who've done me wrong, I'll be like that too. I'm like, no, I think
mm-hmm,
actually the point is you get like that. And then maybe on this side of
mm-hmm,
heaven, you might have that reconciliation, that restoration. Maybe you won't, but you'll be okay because you'll be
mm,
able to say from the bottom of your heart, do not be afraid. I am not in the place of God. What you intended for evil, God used for good. And there's just such a blessing in that
So good.
ability. I mean, it's a miracle for for any one of us to experience that with a difficult relationship, a dysfunctional family, a betrayal in our leadership.
Mm.
If you can say that from your heart, that is a miracle that God will work in your
That's
life to be able
it's
to
a
do that.
grace. That's a grace of a
Hmm.
kingdom that serves a king that's
Right.
benevolent and it's extravagant. And it should
Mm.
blow our minds. We can't formalize it. All right.
Yeah.
So with your seminary theological degree, how many years from Joseph wearing the coat to Joseph saying those words? Do you
Yeah.
know how
So
many years?
13 years he was imprisoned.
Okay.
So that he gets restored to that, like, and there's a whole thing for all of you leaders out there. There's an unbelievable set of leadership lessons here about how Joseph showed up for every opportunity he had, which is
Mm,
why he actually could present a strategy to the whole king of Egypt about what to do in this moment. That's
wow.
because his leadership had been honed in all of these like
It's
limited
good.
positions. So he shows up, and then we know that as he becomes the steward of Egypt, there's 7 years of plenty before there is 7 years of want. And we know that his brothers did not even come to Egypt until at least they had run out of food. So likely another 11 years at least. So
Wow.
we have 13 years
13.
imprisoned, 11 years. So that's 24 years of a story, 17 to
We
like
are,
30.
first of all, no wonder he cried so much. And
I
second,
know.
we are babies. We're like,
We're
it's been
babies. I know.
years.
Like,
So,
it's been 3 days, God. Where are you? Like, we're just, I'm like,
oh, I am guilty. I am called out.
for
I am
so
called out.
long.
I
I
heard something the
know.
other day. I heard somebody go like, you know, it was like a whole 4 years that I had to like keep before the Lord gave me this breakthrough moment. I'm like, 4 years? I'm like 13 with some of these prayers and things. But crybaby, like it's so small, Alisa. Okay, so back to our little equation of tension. Nothing grows under tension, but you also
Yeah.
need time under tension.
Yes.
So time, oh, as much as we don't
Mm.
like it, talk to us about patience.
Yeah. So, time, I mean, this isn't in the book, but let's just coin this as our own axiom. Time under tension is testing. And
Mm.
testing is very confusing for people. Like, why would God test me? That sounds like he's like this, sort of power hungry middle school
Yeah.
teacher who wants to prove that I can fail. That's not what testing means in scripture. What testing is a way to reveal what is already there.
There you
And
go.
if you
That's right.
think about that and you think about sort of tension under time, how do we know let's go into the physical realm. How do we know our limitations? How do we know how much we can lift if we've never tried, right? Like we don't
Right.
actually know.
Right.
How do we know where our break point is or sort of our top limit if we've never tried? We don't.
Wow.
And if we don't let tension under time often reveals, and as hard as this is, what that testing often reveals is what we actually believe about God, what we
Oof.
believe about ourselves, what we believe about the world. And sometimes it's just not pretty. It's not pretty what comes out from under there, because oftentimes pride comes to the surface, fear comes to the surface,
That's
this
right.
sense of shame, I must not be enough, God must not love me. That stuff comes out when we are in that patience space.
Yeah.
And there
Yeah.
may be no
Yeah.
other way that would ever be revealed to you. These things that God wants to heal, there would may be no other way that it would ever be revealed to you if you were not in that difficulty. You might have no idea what you're carrying in the deeper places of your soul if it's never been revealed. So testing is designed to expose what is
Yeah.
already there, both the happy and the hard. Sometimes we discover I'm stronger than I thought and I'm not who I was, and that's beautiful. And
Mm.
sometimes we discover, oh, God is still growing something essential in my soul that I would not have learned about any other way.
So in the ministry, Revelation Wellness, we see health and fitness, all that is really a place of practice. You show up again
Hmm.
and practice again.
Yep.
And in a patient time, in a time of waiting with patience, is the opportunity to practice, do
Hmm.
something again. What are some of the practices that you've learned or maybe care write about in the book during that waiting time?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of practices. Obviously, we could talk about sort of taking care of our body. But I asked this question to some readers as well, particularly around grief, because it felt to me like um, grief is destructive, and it is. It's a loss, it's a death of all kinds, right? And it felt like people's response to a destructive thing in their life was to counterbalance with creativity. And so a
Mm,
lot of the answers were like, I garden, I bake. There were
mm.
things with like hands, like just
Hands,
I
making
paint, I
something.
write. There's something
It's
about
good.
counterbalancing loss with creation, because it's not a renovation. Like grief is not a renovation. Grief is destructive. It's a chance. It's
Yeah.
we have to release what no longer exists, whether that
Exists. Yeah,
thing is a
it's not.
relationship or the hope that we had for something for the future, an image we had about the way our life was going, which was a lot of my story. A lot of the grief I experienced was not just about the circumstances, it was about letting go of a storyline that I thought was a
Yeah.
big part of my life. All of these things that I had probably hung my identity on. I grew up
Yeah.
as an army brat. I moved around. I had no roots. And this experience in our community and in our church was the place for roots. So when we were uprooted, it wasn't just about uprooting, it was about a storyline that I thought was mine to follow that now no longer was.
Mm,
That's just destructive. It doesn't matter that God's doing a new thing. Of course, He's doing a new thing, but my heart still needs to grieve a
yeah.
death of what was and what will not be. And
Mm,
many of those practices ended up being, in a really strange way, very, very tactile, um, creative. I'm a huge fan of yoga because there's
mhm.
something about placing your body in positions that represent ways that your heart may feel,
Mhm.
and that includes places of strength, right? Like we know in yoga there's places of strength, there's places of vulnerability,
Mhm.
whatever practice you have where you're really grounding in your
Mhm.
body.
Mhm.
And I know that you put us in those positions often to say, like, embrace what this looks like,
Yeah.
embrace surrender, embrace worship,
Right.
embrace
Right.
a strong pose.
Yeah.
um so yeah, that's
Creating,
part of it, all
creating.
of those things, a lot of creating. Yeah.
I love that. I've actually never heard that definition before, but that
Mhm.
makes sense. I've lost something, and to create is to gain, or to put something back into the earth,
Yeah.
to make something visibly seen,
Hmm.
because something will no longer be seen again. Oh,
Hmm.
oh,
And maybe it's like a little place of control, and not the bad word of control, but just in his way of saying,
oh.
and that's like, I think
Agency.
about that. Yeah, it's agency. Wonderful. Perfect word. I tell a story in the book about reorganizing my spice drawer. Why? Like, I don't
Agency.
it was. I was like, I'm going to get these pretty little jars with these pretty little labels, and I'm going to take perfectly fine spice jars and pour them into different fine spice
Right.
jars, because I just feel a sense of like, okay, I've just done a thing. I've brought a little life and joy into this little spot in my family. And I think that's fine. And that's part of
I
me,
do
is like,
too.
just be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself
Yeah.
in a not
Yeah.
what I signed up for season. You don't have to slay the day every day. You don't have to crush
Yeah.
everything you do, but be faithful. Be
Yeah.
faithful and be gentle. And there's so much gain, right, that comes from that.
Uh, Share with our listeners about the fact that you were a female pastor, leading a
Yes.
church, correct?
Still
Like,
am. Still am a
still
female
am.
pastor.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
go. Let's
So
yeah, let's talk about this role of women in the church.
absolutely.
Not a hot topic at all.
Gosh, I know. I'm like, where do you want me to start? Well, I'll start here. And this is often the case with women that I speak with who are called to ministry. I didn't sign up for that. And that's
Yeah,
I start there. I'm
another
like,
one.
when God places a passion in your heart and a fire in your soul and gives you a gift,
Hmm,
you don't sign up for it. Like, you
come on.
have it. You can't do it and I remember being 22 years old and teaching in a student ministry, and like my heart was on fire. And
Fire.
from that day until 2015, when I was ordained, that's a long time. It was like 15 years. I constantly came to the Lord. If you wanted me to be a pastor, why didn't you make me a man? I didn't
Wow.
sign up to be a trailblazer. I wasn't
Yeah.
trying to make a point. Like
Yeah.
I didn't want to live my life in a way that was like trying to be, I just didn't. That
Yeah.
just was not interesting to me. But
Yeah.
was interesting to me was being obedient. And it actually, again, we started there. We talked about the limitations I was experiencing, which is why I wrote in the first place. And my first book did relatively well. And I felt the weight of reaching so many people with spiritual truths and being under no umbrella of there
Mm,
was no
mm.
where was my ordaining body? Where was my group of people who say, we're with you, we're for you, we
Yeah.
approve
We'll
of
watch your
your
backside. We'll see your blind
yeah,
spots.
yeah, by the way, while you're talking in depth about God's sovereignty and people's trauma, we stand with you about your authority, your spiritual authority that you've been given. And so I only pursued ordination in my denomination because I read about the office of the teaching elder, which is what it's called in my denomination, and I'm like, this is what I do, guys.
Mm,
This is what I
mm,
do in books. Shouldn't
mm,
I need to be obedient to the calling.
mm.
And that's kind of how that story progressed, and things have come a long way since then. I teach in my denomination's churches and preach, and it's a joy. It's a joy to have gone to the other side and to open the door for some younger females in my life that I mentor who just have not had the experience that I had. They just
And what
step up and they're ready to roll, and it's great.
what denomination?
Evangelical Presbyterian Church. So the EPC, sort of a small,
EPC.
moderate Presbyterian branch. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so like, well, grew up Christian, but I didn't know anything about anything. So when I hear about all the different
Yeah.
church branches and beliefs, I'm like, wow, this is really interesting and how divided and
Yeah.
tense it can get. But you've kept your head down and did what you were called to do.
Yeah. And they've been the teams have been great that I work with. And so, when I stepped out of my full-time ministry role where I was like on a senior team in a large church as the discipleship pastor, when I stepped out of that, they were great. They were like, we approve, you're an evangelist, and which is like what I've always wanted to be. So my actual title switched over to evangelist within my
Wow.
denomination, which was like delightful. I'm like, this is what God had for me. And it's okay to retire or to graduate or whatever you want to call it from a
Mm,
position into a new season. And that's been a hard lesson for me to learn, is how to retire gracefully or embrace new seasons and see them as transitions that God designed, not
yeah.
failures, not they
Yes.
can
That's a
be
good word.
transitions that God designs. And that's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
What's the dream in your heart, Nicole? Like, what's
Hmm.
something that you maybe would only tell a close friend?
Um, I write about dreams and not what I signed up for. And I got to the end of the book, and this isn't a secret because it's in the book, but I I had a one-day experience a year ago in all of these ways of things I could have never imagined happening. And my husband said to me at the end of the night, and he said it like he just said it off the cuff. He was like, "Man, all your dreams are coming true." And I was like, they are. Like all my
Mm,
dreams are coming true. And
mm,
I've dreamt of being, this will make me cry. I've dreamt of being a faithful mom to my kids, that
mm.
I could have a good relationship with them. And on Sunday, my 19-year-old daughter was like, "You're the best, mom." I'm like, "Really? This is my
That's
first
sweet.
performance review for my children. Like, you're a grown
Mm,
up now." And she's like, "You're the best." And I just was like, "Oh my gosh, I have a friendship with my
praise
daughter,
God.
and
Yeah.
I have wonderful sons that I love who are polite and care deeply about people. And of course, everyone
Yeah.
makes mistakes, but I feel like I'm living the dreams that I've had. And I
Yeah.
don't know which dreams are next. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I'm up for
Yeah.
them,
You're
whatever
available
they may
for
look
them.
like.
And you're ready, knowing it might not look what you signed up for. It
It
might not look
definitely
that
doesn't
way.
look that way. It definitely
Yeah.
doesn't look that way. But
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready to say I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to grow. It's okay that it looks different than I expected, and I don't know what's coming next, but God's not done with me, and that's for sure. And I'm ready for His plan instead of maybe my own.
You're good at it. I love your heart. I can see how bold and fierce and free. I like it. very good
Thank
to see.
you. Thank
Tell me
you.
about the books that are on your
Yeah.
bedside table. These are fun, rapid fire, fun closing questions. What books on your bedside table right now?
Yep, I have an Invitation to Prayer by Henry Nouwen on my
I have
bedside
one. I don't have
table.
it on my bedside, but I have that book. It's a great book.
Yes,
Henry now and
yeah, I'm like circling back on Henry, so I pull one off of my bookshelf and put it next to my bed, like, every night, to kind of just revisit some things. Letters from Henry was what I read last, and it was so great. It was a compilation of his personal correspondence with a variety of people, and it's beautiful. So, yeah, I love to read spiritual reading at night. I don't have it by my bed, but on my iPad, I have Scaling People and Change, which doesn't sound riveting, but actually is, and I love it.
What's
It's
it about?
from
Is it
it's about basically leading
I was gonna say the leadership.
wide, yeah, like organization wide changes. It's from the COO of Stripe, who is on my dream list, and I do plan to meet her. I don't know her, but
Okay.
if you're
Let it be
listening,
said.
I'm out
Let it
here.
be.
Yes, let
Let
it
it
be.
be sold. Yeah.
So I love her writing and just love the way she's representing sort of marketplace leadership. So I'm reading that as well. And I have a fiction book. I'm reading The People We Keep right now that my daughter recommended that I read. So I always like to have fiction, leadership, and spiritual
Those are,
reading going on.
what I think of books. I used to be a person that if I start a book, I just got to read it all the way through. Even if I'm like, grinding it out, there's something about maybe a performance mentality where now I've stopped doing that. And I began to look at books like channels on TV.
Oh, I
Like,
love it.
I'm going to switch the channel. I'm not into that right now. Switch. So,
yeah.
but I annotate, like I take notes of everything all the time so I can remember where I left off. So
I love it. Oh man.
yeah.
What's on your bookshelf? What's got you going?
What's on my bookshelf right now? You know what? A friend of mine sent me A Garden Within. Anita,
Okay.
have you heard Dr. Anita? What's her name? She just was on Oprah. So it's
Oh,
all
no, I
about
don't know.
the body, neurobiology. Yeah, she was also on the If Gathering. That's on my bedside. Another book, The Brother Lawrence, Practicing the Presence.
Yes,
Just that
practicing the
tiny
presence
little
of
one.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just finished up. There's a book called The Other Half of the Church. Actually, it's the second time I've read it. It's a book basically saying half
Is
of
it
the church.
Carolyn Custis James?
Nope, I can't remember his name. It's
Oh,
two people though, maybe. But
I was
yeah, it's
gonna
about the fact
say
like we're just
half the
the
church.
church
Yeah.
is too heady. Like all the knowledge that we have, and that
Oh,
what we have forgotten is
yes. The
joy.
book I'm talking about is
Joy.
the half of the church that's females not in leadership. So
Oh yeah, no, this is a
a
different one.
different
This is
way to
more
cut it
about
in half.
our being, our
Oh,
wholeness. Like,
good. Yes.
yeah. I mean, I'm
Absolutely.
kind of like if you're always reading leadership stuff, I always have something about body, neurobiology, chemistry, something that way.
Yeah.
And then something that's just spiritual for my soul. I am not, and everyone knows this if they know me, I have a hard time getting into fiction. What does that say
Hmm.
about me?
Well, I mean, I think
Have
it
I
kind of
not read a good
depends.
fiction book? That's what I
Do you
wonder.
like movies?
I do like movies.
I mean, do you like
I do.
stories?
I do love stories, but something about a book, the fact that it takes so long to get going,
See,
I'm out.
I just think there are visual people and there's like sort of audits, like reading people. Like I would
But I love to
rather
read. I would
read a
rather
book than
learn
watch a movie.
something.
I would
You
literally
would,
rather read a book than watch a movie, a fiction book, than watch a story on
I
a
would
movie.
rather read a good book than watch a fiction movie. I think
Have
that's
you
where I'm
not read a good novel?
I know. I'm
I
going to
am
need a
flummoxed
list.
right now. I am feeling distressed. I'm like,
No, I have
not
read
been
some
involved.
good novel.
I
I do. I have
captured you.
read good novels, but then I don't find it. I rate everything to that, and I don't want to read anything else unless it's like,
How about chemistry lessons?
no, is that a good one?
Top novel of last year on every list.
All right.
Okay,
Everyone, you heard it
try
here.
it.
Chemistry
You heard it
lessons.
here. You heard it here first, guys. Those of you listening, I know you're gonna thumbs up if you read it, because really, I mean, it was
I want to
runaway
read more
hit.
fiction. Okay, chemistry lessons. I want to read more fiction. I love learning. I want to learn.
Yeah.
But then I've realized lately, I'm like, I need to not learn so much. I need to just like
Well,
go on a creative
Are you an
cruise.
Enneagram fan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a 3?
Nope, but
Okay. Because I was gonna. You're an 8. Okay. So I'm a 3. And I think the reason I have to read fiction is because otherwise I'm always reading to optimize my life. I'm optimizing my
That's what
work.
I'm
I'm
saying.
optimizing. So
That's what
my
I'm
brain is
saying.
always on and I am literally not like resting. And there is a deeper part of that where I'm controlling my world, right? Like I'm like, well, if I read
Totally.
this, I'm controlling my world. And fiction
Totally.
says I'm not in control of my world. And even when I'm resting, God is working, which is why it's almost like a spiritual practice for me to be like,
Yeah.
now
That's
I
a good
shall
word.
read this fiction story
I
that I
now I
can't
shall read. Yeah.
maximize for my work. Like,
You're
really,
right. Yeah,
to be
no, I
honest.
feel like the Holy Spirit was already like kind of tapping me, like, good job on all the learning you've done over the last 25 years. Let's go have some fun. When I go have some fun, I'm like, it's not fun, but
Oh my goodness.
chemistry lessons. Here I come. All
Yep.
right. Well, the final rapid fire 3 questions.
Yep.
Favorite way to move your body. I think you already mentioned some of it. Lifting
Hmm.
weights. What did you say? Yoga and
I love to run actually, but my favorite way, if I have time, is I discovered a cardio dance studio here in my town. It is the best. So it's like modern jazzercise, better than that, but it's basically choreographed to music and the music just comes on and you just pick it up as you go. And it's like 15
and
songs in a row.
and where do you live?
In Richmond, Virginia.
Oh,
So
you're too far away.
Turn Cardio Studio. Yeah.
What's
Give
it
shout out
called?
to Sandy.
Turn?
Shout out to Sandy who started it and owns the idea.
It's called
Turn.
Turn.
Yeah, it's
Turn.
called Turn. Yeah,
Okay,
love
anyone
it.
there? Well, nearby. I would love
Love
that.
it.
That's so
Yeah.
much fun.
So if I
Okay.
can get there, my daughter and I go together. We have a
Oh,
blast.
it's
It's
so
the
much fun.
best.
Me and my daughter we go, the gym we belong to kind of has a lot of older people. I don't know
Uh-huh.
why. It's our community. And Sophia's like the hit. My daughter's 19 years old and she starts dancing. All the older ladies like, yeah. But we have
Yes,
a blast.
that's exactly you're describing me and my
Your people.
19-year-old daughter
Okay.
to a T. The four of us would be quite a show, I'm sure.
It would be amazing. I love it. Okay. Coffee, tea, or kombucha. What's your go-to?
Coffee. Oh,
Yeah,
tea at night. Tea at night.
tea
Coffee
at
in the
night.
morning.
Okay. Is there no caffeine in the tea at night? I imagine.
Well, I'll do it. So my mom taught me a long time ago. I come from Irish heritage. She was taught this. If you are ever tired, you drink a caffeinated cup of hot tea at 2 o'clock. Close your eyes for 15 minutes. You will wake up ready to roll. So especially when my kids were little, this was like the hack of life. But I'll drink like decaf black tea at night. So.
Wow, we are getting so many good nuggets out of you. This is
Thanks,
incredible.
mom.
Final
Passing
one.
on her tips.
What's your like loyalty to your athleisure wear?
Ooh. Mm. To my athleisure, not my
Yeah.
athletic, like
Well,
athleisure,
yeah.
Viore. Viore
Oh
out of San
boy.
Diego. Yeah.
Once you put it on,
You
you
can't go
can't take
back.
it off. You're
You
like
can't.
everything else is like cardboard. It is
True.
addicting. All right,
Absolutely.
everyone, where are they going to go to get your book? I think right now it's in pre-order, and I'm going to
Yes.
give a little shout out. Everyone, pre-orders matter so much. So if
Thank
you
you.
enjoyed listening to Nicole as much as I did, I'm going to go pre-order it. I'm going to order chemistry lessons and I'll pre-order because I know how much it matters
It
to
really does.
authors.
All
Yeah.
of those pre-orders from now until the book releases, they all count as one big
Big
order, which is
yeah.
amazing. That's why it matters.
Yeah.
And we try to, it's fun because, the people who pre-order, you get the book first, you've got it, it's going to come land on your doorstep. And then you guys are the ones who tell others about it. And it's just like, you're
Mhm.
really important to authors. So if you go to my website, which will be in the show notes, NicoleUnice.com, it will pop right up there, but the landing page is not what I signed up for. And if you pre-order, you can get the audiobook. We're going to release that to you for free. And then I also put together a journal. Speaking of creativity, I put together a journal that helps you write your own prayers through these pieces of the seasons that we go through in the book. And I share sort of my most vulnerable prayers from my own journal from that season in
Mm.
my life. So that's just for pre-order folks. They get that, grab that extra
Fantastic.
journal.
Okay, so we're going to put a link in the show notes, guys. Swipe
Great.
up, send you right there. I just ordered it. It's on my iPad. Are you an iPad reader or a book
I am
reader?
when I travel. I actually don't
Yeah,
prefer
no,
it, but like I can't
I
travel with I
agree.
can't bring all 18 books in my carry-on. So
It's a tug of war because I would rather have the hard copy, but
me
I
too.
like having my whole everything and anything at my hands. Well, back to
I know.
optimizing.
I you know what I do? If it's amazing, I order a copy of it. So I get it on
If
the iPad. If it's amazing and I'm going to reference it and I need it on my bookcase right here, then I'll get a hard
same.
copy.
And
Yeah.
then if it's really, really good, I even order on Audible. I'm
Oh,
like a triple
really?
threat. Yeah.
Wow,
I
look
have a
at you.
few
You're like
authors that
basically
I
you
have
could like read it back to the author. You're like, I know it by
really
heart.
good. Oh, all right, Nicole. Well, new best friends and write
Yay! I
another
love
book
it.
so you can come back or do
Oh my
something and
gosh,
anything, let
yes.
us
I'll
know.
come
But
back
I'm really excited.
anytime, I've always got
Okay.
something to say. But yes,
I'm so
thank you
glad. Let's
guys
shout
for
out to Katie, your
my
PR at
publicist. Yeah, she's the
your
best.
publicist at Tyndale, because she's like, you got to get Nicole
Yeah,
on the
she
show.
likes
You
strong
guys are
arms
meant
doing
to
it.
be together. And I'm like, okay, I trust you, Katie. And shout out to Katie.
Shout
Good
out to Katie,
choice.
she's the best. All right.
Uh,
Thank you so much for having me and
thanks.
you guys for being part of this conversation. It's a delight.
Yeah. Thanks, friend.
Thanks for watching, and remember, this video was brought to you by Revelation Wellness Instructor Training Program. Do you love Jesus and have a passion for fitness and wellness? Or maybe you're tired of the roller coaster of obsessing over and neglecting your body, and you know there has to be more to fitness. Let us equip you to lead others to health and wholeness rooted in Jesus Christ through our faith-based fitness instructor training program. Go to our website to learn more and listen to testimonies of people just like you who are bringing hope and healing to their communities as fitness teacher gospel preachers. Click the link in the description of this video and download a packet to get your journey to health and wholeness through Christ started today.